Yo guys, what's up? It's Gunna226. Here we're going to be talking today about front sight handgun training class day 2. So if you haven't heard day 1 yet, go back and listen to that video. After this video, there's going to be day 3, then day 4. So for day 2, you probably want to get there kind of early. They start dry practice at 7:40 a.m. There is no class in the morning. You go straight to the range. And they will do a dry practice for people who can't do that over the night in their room. They will do a dry practice for about 15 minutes in the morning, about 7:40-ish. They'll give you instructions the night before when to get there, when it'll take place. So just be aware. The actual class starts at 8 a.m. You first start with the lecture. The lecture they go through is malfunctions. So, malfunctions are when you get a problem with your gun, like stovepipe or whatever, double feed. I have another video dedicated to that, and the front sight's methodology for clearing those malfunctions. And I highly recommend you get familiar with that before you go to class, because it can be a little difficult, and when you're under time pressure, it can be even more difficult. So when you have a jam in your gun, you need a gunsmith to fix it. But when you have a malfunction, you can fix it yourself. Like I said before, there's type 1, type 2, and type 3. The type 1 is basically done by tap, rack, bang, except front sight does a little spin on that, because there have been issues, I guess, with some law enforcement where he did tap, rack, bang, and he shot somebody he shouldn't have, and his head was saying like, "Oh, don't shoot," but his training and his instincts kicked in, which is really what you want, except he was trained maybe not quite right, because he shot somebody he shouldn't have. So basically, type 1 malfunction is an empty chamber. So you do a tack, wrap, and flip, and decide. Type 2 is what they call a stovepipe. And you can go over this, and I have the other video. Type 3 is a double feed. This is probably the hardest malfunction to clear, but learning this malfunction can clear pretty much anything you got wrong with your weapon. So I highly recommend you go look at that video. So at about 9:15, they do this exercise with the wrist grip, where the instructor will come down the line, and he will have you hold your arm out like this, and he will grip it like he's gripping the firearm. And he will show you how much isometric tension there should be, and then he will start giving you some recoil, right? So do that. So it gives you an idea of how good your stance is, how well your body absorbs the recoil, and he'll adjust your stance as needed. And then you'll do the same thing to him, and you'll be able to feel what the recoil feels like in your hand on his arm. It's kind of weird. Not really sure about it, but it's an exercise they do. I think there's some value to it. It really does help adjust your stance a little bit better, so your whole body is part of the shooting experience. So after that, you take a short break. As he goes down the line, you're dismissed, and you can take a short break, use the restroom or whatever, and then you come back about 11 o'clock or so, and you need one empty mag. So this is where you go through the lecture. You learn about emergency reloads, stuff like that. The gun will lock back on an empty mag. That's why at check-in they make you do that. And they teach you how to fix it. Also, they teach you how to do speed reloads and tactical reloads. So going through all this is where your drop pouch will come in handy. I did a couple mentions of the drop pouch. Highly recommend you wear that on your support side in the front, in front of your magazines, and just to give you more ammo and a few extra things you might need on the range. And go back and look at that video. Then they do a failure to stop drill. I guess there's the example that they use is Platt and Maddox from the 1980s. There was a shootout, and basically somebody's wearing body armor. The moral of the story is if there's a dedicated opponent, the way to go is with a headshot. And that's basically a band around the middle of your eyes. Basically the cranial-ocular cavity. If you put a bullet in there, that person will drop, and even if he's a dedicated opponent, body armor is not a thing, and he'll go down. So after that, you go out, you do some shooting, we call headshots, and then after that is lunchtime. You'll probably be getting a lecture from one of their sponsors that they have on site. Is Axle, the in-ear hearing protection. There's a few different companies out there. These guys are pretty good. I didn't actually sign up with them or go even take the hearing test or anything like that. They seem kind of pricey. I guess they do have some cheaper end, from like $100 up to about $2,000, $2,500. And it's not really covered by insurance. They're similar to hearing aids. They're not bad, from what I've heard, and they're really helpful for shooting a rifle. And there's a couple different brands out there that do this. Getting a standard pair of muffs, maybe not quite the answer. So take a look at it. The next, after lunch, there's another lecture. It's civil and criminal liability. So there's a couple key things. If the cop shows up, obviously you do not want to be holding the gun when the cop shows up, because he'll see you as a threat, and that could end badly. There's a couple other things. They tell you a couple sentences to say, and a couple situations. This is where the part one of the lecture comes in, with the letter and having that on hand. After the lecture, you go back to the range and you work on designated headshots. You do a hostage situation, which the bad guy has obvious body armor or has a hostage, or the bad guy is undercover. They're in cover. So, the key is to be fast out of the holster, and then pause, gather your thoughts, get a good sight picture, and then press the trigger once you have a good target. Get a surprise break with a slow press, and focus on the front sight. They always emphasize that. So, then you start shooting under pressure, time pressure. You'll start shooting from the 3, 5, 7, and 10 yard lines. You also get to shoot from the 15-yard line. And this is where accuracy becomes a real problem for some people. Out past 10 yards, I know initially I had issues shooting very accurately at 10, 15 yards. But with training, you get better. So just kind of go with it. Don't expect to get all body shots or all head shots from distance. The longest headshot that they require, I think, is 7 yards or maybe 10 yards. Yeah, I don't remember offhand. Basically, these are the time tests that you'll be taking at the end of the 4th day or the middle of the 4th day. They will also start timing you for the malfunction drills. So, not only do you have to pass the regular skills test, which is like it's usually 2 shots to the torso, controlled pair, within the time limit. You also need to pass malfunction drills within the time and without mistakes. And there's various associated penalties with that, and I might go over the scoring system in a different video, just to keep the length down on this one. So then you get released back to the classroom about 5 o'clock. and you start talking about tactical movement. So the reason they do tactical movement is for the next day. They do things like the shoot house. They teach you how to move through doors. They talk about the fatal funnel, around corners and intersections. So you get out of class about 6:30 at night. And you go back to the hotel room, get changed. You might want to shower. You get there about a little after 7 something, 7:15 or so. And get something to eat and get a good night rest, because you got 2 more days left of training. And this training is pretty intense. There's not a lot of shooting on days 1 and 2. You go through about 300 rounds or so. On the first couple days, there's not much on the first day. You might go through about 100 rounds on the first day, maybe more. And then about 200 rounds on the second day. But the third day and the fourth day are shooting extravaganzas. So, if you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm going to be doing another part 3, day 3 video here shortly. If you have any questions, stay tuned, and they might be answered in part 2 or part 3 of this video series, 4-day handgun review at Front Sight. Thanks for watching.